Are we on? Rich, are we on?
Thank you guys for joining us again tonight. We'll go ahead and get this started with David Moore.
First of two questions. Stephen, if you could start, you often talk about, staying patient, executing the plan, and staying true to your board. Do you think what you were able to do in the second and third rounds tonight was an example of that, what you're talking about?
Well, certainly. Hats off to our whole team, our organization. I think, it really played out in our favor, and may not have been the perfect order in terms of how we may have originally thought it was going to go. But, if you do stay patient, and you do stay true to your board, I do think things work out for you. And, of course, we were just very fortunate. Obviously, Diggs was the guy that we really liked a lot, had him in for the interviews, and was a cornerback that we really thought could be a difference maker for us in terms of coming in and competing and helping us with the loss of Byron Jones, and then of course to get a talent from Oklahoma like Gallimore. That was certainly a huge win for us in terms of him being there in the third round. So yes, I just think if you're patient, you stay true to it, and you believe in it, and you have good players that are sitting there, and you're willing to wait on it to come to you, then good things will happen.
And for Jerry and Mike, can both of you just talk about what impressed you most about what you're able to do tonight, and your thoughts on Diggs and Gallimore both?
I'll go first, and I'm going to let Mike really get into some of their football characteristics that he can address. But big schools, good backgrounds, they played at high levels. The upside on both these players were a big factor. They are very capable of going up relative to all of their skills, but yet what they've done shows us that they have those skills. All of them are very physical. They have physical measurables that really are prototype for the positions, and they are excellent across the board. All three of these guys are outstanding athletes by any measure for any sport. So that's a heck of a combination, and then they've got the production. So when I look at how we got here, this thing by its very nature is based on how it falls, and we're living right. It fell right for us these first 2 days.
Definitely to be halfway through the draft and to be here with these three players feels great. Trevon is someone that we spent a lot of time on. We met with them both at the combine and in video conferencing, and you don't have to watch too much film to get excited about what he brings to the table. So I really commend our scouting department and the coaching breakdowns, and I think he's going to be a great fit for how we want to play on defense. You look at his skill set, not only with his length and his smooth hips and ability to cover, but the way he attacks the football. He has excellent hands, and he plays. When that ball goes up at the breaking point of a route, he has as good as chances as the receiver to get the ball. You see it throughout his video, and if you look at Neville, Gallimore, and what he brings, just his explosiveness, I think he'll be a great fit for our inside positions there in the defensive line. The thing that jumped out to me is his ability just really to fly down the line. I mean, he plays sideline to sideline. Very impressed with his skill set, and it's exciting, as Jerry's already stated, with his upside. So feel great about the two additions today to go along with C.D. Lamb.
Mickey Spagnola.
Mike, when you get a guy like Trevon Diggs, the fact that he also had some ball skills, returnability, does that even create more value for him? And for Gallimore, where do you see him fitting in at the defensive tackle position?
Well, I think like anything, you don't have enough of them. I mean, you just definitely start Gallimore at the 3 technique. But, you know, this game is so much about sub defense. And, you know, if you look at the way the NFL is, it's been averaging about 80% sub offense and sub defense. I mean, 2-back offense is coming back into the league more the last year and a half, or last 2 years, frankly, than you've seen in the prior 8 or 9 years. So I think that he's a great fit there. And I agree with you on Diggs' ball skills and his ability to be a returner. Definitely adds more value that he brings to our football team.
Tyler?
Stephen, when things unfold the way they did last night, and you know the right thing to do is wait on defense, do you go into a day like today saying, okay, today is about defense, or is it still we might take this offensive guy or that offensive guy if it's right?
Well, I think it's it's the latter. I mean, you have to be willing, to make some hard decisions. And it goes back to, if you're a big believer that player acquisition is 365 days a year, then you're going to catch up to what you need to do ultimately. But I just think if you will stay true to your board and you'll pick the best players that are available to you, and you believe in the work your scouts have done, you believe in the work your coaches have done in evaluating these players, and you take them off the way you put them up there, then I think you're going to have successful drafts. And certainly if it's if it's equal, if it's right there where it's really close, and we had some discussions like this today. I mean, truthfully, to be honest with you, it was a tough decision for us between Diggs and Gallimore, and they were right there. And we had some in-depth discussions about what happens, if you pass on Diggs there, and the depth in the draft at corner versus the depth in the draft in the defensive line. So you put so much energy and effort into your board, and whether it's the scouts who are working, all year long, whether it's the coaches who are obviously grinding it out the last 3 months leading up to the draft, all the work that goes on from your ancillary teams, you just put so much energy into it, and if you'll stick with it, good things will happen to you, I believe.
We'll go to Todd Archer.
Stephen, you told us yesterday when you go watch some of John Stevens' games in the SEC that you'll get reports or get lists from Will's guys about who to look at. Diggs had a pick 6 against your Razorbacks in that game. You mentioned, well, it wasn't against John Stevens, so I think we're okay.
Yeah.
But did that play stand out? And and Diggs talked about, you guys kind of joked a little bit about it, and you guys had your video conference. What do you remember that day, that game, and what he was like on the field?
Well, absolutely. I mean, he did stick out. And, there's, in general, you go watch Alabama, you go watch Auburn, you go watch LSU. I mean, you're going against grown men who are going to be playing in this league. And, I know Mike, he talks a lot about going to a lot of college games there with the Wisconsin and Ohio State, some of those Big Ten schools. I mean, there's nothing like seeing these guys in person, in these SEC atmospheres. Jerry and I have really enjoyed just watching these great football players live, and and then to get a little feedback from him, because he's in the quarterback room, especially when you're looking at the defensive side of the ball and how they game planned them. It's pretty interesting in terms of the feedback you get from John Stevens, just because he's been in there with some great coaches who are trying to figure out how to move the ball on these defenses. So I think it's a great deal to be able to go to these amazing places like Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida. I mean, that's some of the best football in the country, and then get to see them on these draft boards. It's it's interesting.
And Jerry, what excites you about day 3 and where you guys stand and what do you think you guys need?
What excites me is if it can happen to you on day 1 and 2. I'm a dreamer enough to think it could happen to you on day 3. I can't wait if it keeps going like this. We've gotten 3 players here that we've seen them make inordinate, rare plays, all 3 of them. And they are capable, they've got the upside to get in the habit of that. And that's fun to get a player with these kind of upside. It's fun to beat the value at the place you draft them relative to what's generally considered value. That's fun. And so I'm going to try to remember what I've done the last 2 days and try to keep it up tomorrow. I'm gonna
Calvin
go back.
Watkins.
I'm superstitious. I'm going to go back, do the exactly same thing I did last night. Don't ask me about that.
This one's for Mike. You didn't go to the Senior Bowl because you were putting your staff together. Obviously, the Cowboys have drafted a lot of guys from the Senior Bowl. Just your thoughts on relying on the scouts, the guys that you didn't really know that well, to give you the evaluation you needed for this defensive tackle.
Well, make no mistake about it. In my opinion, your scouting department is the heartbeat and the foundation of this process. They're targeting these players long before the Senior Bowl and as early as they can in their careers. So everything that they put together, as a coaching staff, you're relying on them to basically really tee them up for you, so we can take a look at them and give an honest evaluation. So I know really throughout this whole process, I can't say enough about Will McClay and our scouts and the job that they've done, getting us ready and just the conversations of, with, the background of each prospect and really being so organized that, as a coaching staff, we were able to spend a bunch of time on these players and give an honest evaluation.
One last one. Stephen, was any surprise to see Diggs there for you guys, or is that where you kind of thought he might fall based on your board and everything?
You don't want to say, everything's a surprise, but, obviously when you're targeting guys and you got guys that you hope might be there, it is nice to see them show up. We've had years where you're snake bit and, you start thinking about a guy that might fall to you, and sure enough, the first time you think about him, he's gone. And so, at the same time, we feel like we've done a really good job with our board. We feel like there were, a number of players that could be there for us that would, make us feel good. But certainly to have Diggs there was, candidly a surprise to us, and certainly something that at the end of the day, when you get a player like that falls deep into the second round like that, you feel good about it.
I might add to that answer, we have well done, in-depth studies and charts that we all were reviewing this morning before the draft. And before the draft, he was in the 25% chance of falling to us there. That was before we even started this morning. That's what all of the machinations of our studies showed, that he was in that percentile. He was in the 1%. Diggs was in the 1% chance of falling to us there. 1.
Thank you. My first question is for Mike. When we talked to your new coaches during the early part of the offseason after the hiring process, one of the things that stood out to me was Mike Nolan saying that the number one thing on defense and winning games is getting the ball back for your offense. And of cornerback play in particular, he said, there's no fear throwing the football for the quarterback if it's going to be completed or on the ground. But when the guy covering them has a chance to take it the other way, the ball hawk type of player, that's the difference maker. I'm wondering how that description fits into the player that you see Diggs becoming.
Definitely. I think you answered it in your description. I mean, he's so competitive at the breaking point of routes and does a great job of sitting on the breaking point of routes, and then he turns himself into a receiver. So, and definitely, I mean, having the opportunity to coach the quarterback position and be part of the offense for decades in this league, you know, when you're not as concerned about a Deion Sanders, and, you know, guys that are going to go up and take the ball away from you, you know, you play with a different mindset as a quarterback to the receiver. So, I mean, you're a lot more aggressive with your back shoulder throws, and you just play at a different confidence level and aggressiveness when you don't fear the defensive coverage. So Trevon brings that element to his, you know, to Dallas with his game. So I think he's definitely has tremendous ball skills.
Thanks, Mike. And my other question is for everyone. You talked about different philosophies, the Packers in your experience, Mike, and what the Cowboys have had in terms of the value of drafting a quarterback. Are there still quarterbacks available that are of interest to you, and what priority do you attach to that position tomorrow?
Well, I think the quarterback position is always a priority. I think we all understand the importance of the position is to the game of football and to your football team. So I think, you know, as you look to improve your football team, you try to improve every position, and but at the end of the day, you really trust the weight and the value of your draft board, and I think our discipline and patience has been extraordinary, and I think you definitely see the result of that.
Till?
First question. Consider trading up. How much did you consider or talk about trading up in the draft to maybe get one of those safeties that went off early? And Jerry, for you personally, you've known to do a lot of trading in the draft. How tough is it for you to just sit there and not make any moves?
Well, it isn't tough to. It isn't tough because so often what you don't do is the right trade. But we were very conscious of what was happening, and we started the day off and went right up until we drafted him. Working trades and trying to decide if we wanted to trade up, and that was a consideration. And we spent a lot of time today thinking about trading up. And so, yes, that was a part of our day. The figuring, and of course, there's one thing about this trading now: you got to have somebody to trade with, and that's always. But you've got to be ready. You've got to do all the work as though you had several of them wanting to trade with you.
And why did you not pull one off?
Why?
Why did one not come through? You didn't have a good trade partner, or you just felt good about what was coming to you?
Yeah, frankly, we really had some that we couldn't get that would have caused us to move up to get the very pick we got, and we couldn't get those trades. Nobody wanted to trade it.
Pat Doney?
Gary, my question is, you mentioned earlier about the big schools, and you guys have really made that a theme the last few years in the draft. The decision to draft a guy who plays for Nick Saban, though, how much more value does he have in a transition from college to the NFL playing for a coach like that who is so respected, especially on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, he just has the success and the stature to attract the best football players in college, or some of the best. Fortunately for everybody else, they're just not limited to the numbers that Alabama can have. There's a lot to go around, and so he doesn't get them all. But boy, he does get a high percentage of them. So Alabama says something, and it has everything to do with the / Nick Saban, particularly the fact that he is a defensive secondary coach specialist. He I'm not trying to get into how he runs his staff, and I probably specifically don't know this year, the last year, what have you, but I do know he knows defensive backs. He really does a great job of helping the NFL understand his players. He understands that what's in their best interest, and he understands what's in Alabama's best interest if they come up and be stars in the NFL. That helps him get better players. He's a pro in an amateur business.
Michael Gilkin.
Around the failed attempts to pull off a trade, presumably to acquire him. I was just curious how would you characterize that wait from Diggs in the second round to Gallimore in the third? It seems frustrating. What was that exactly like tonight?
Yes.
The room, whomever would like it.
Jerry's always hard to hold back. He likes some excitement, but no, it was actually real good. We, obviously very pleased with getting Diggs, and took a deep breath and kind of get everything organized, and then you get back situated and you go again. It actually hadn't been that bad. I mean, the drafts had a good pace to it, and I really feel like we did have a good group of players. One of the things I heard someone mention in our group who've done a lot of research, they run our analytics department, is this one of the deepest second rounds, in terms of the league consensus that there's been. And so, and we actually echo that. We've had one of our biggest numbers probably ever in terms of the number of players in our second round. So, there were quite a few players sitting there that we felt like, at the end of the day would slide into that third for us, and, we'd get a really great second round pick with our third round pick. And as it turns out, that's what happened with Gallimore.
And then for Mike, I was curious what your thoughts are about the importance of building a position room the right way so that whomever you select can step into that room and have the best chance to succeed. And I think this applies for a number of your rooms, but, thinking about your defensive line coach, and you draft Gallimore in the third round, and you can learn behind Gerald McCoy, you can learn behind, other guys, Ontario Poe that you've added as former Pro Bowlers, guys who are already part of that room from the roster prior to your arrival. What's the importance of that when you add these prospects into those rooms?
I think the most important thing is the first step. And I mean, the question that's always asked during the process of selection is how does this individual, how does this player fit into the locker room? Because I mean, that's the first step. And then how they disperse into the position room. So yes, that's all part of the evaluation, and because at the end of the day, this is the ultimate team sport, and fit is important for each and every player, and obviously with the position coaches.
Donna?
I just have one quick question, and this is for anybody. Neville described himself as a jack of all trades. He played pretty much everywhere from B gap to B gap in Oklahoma's defensive line. What do you think his versatility will add to the defensive front here in Dallas?
Well, I think it's exactly what you're looking for, because it's like anything, the more you can do, the more opportunity you put yourself in position for. So the fact that he can play, multiple techniques is something that you look for, and at the end of the day, it's about rotation. You tend to forget it's a long season. It's going to take all your players, and especially up front. So the ability to have versatility obviously pays well for us.
John Machota.
Stephen, what do you guys still need to get accomplished tomorrow, and just kind of what would it be like? What would be your scenario for to come out of that day 3 and you look at it as a positive? What would you guys have to do?
I mentioned earlier, who knows what the orders are going to be, but, I must say, if I knew we were going to come out of here with a back end player on defense, a front player on defense, and a receiver with our first 3 picks, that'd be hard to have a problem with. And so I think from here on out, you just, as I said earlier, you just, at this point right now, you stick with your board. I mean, this is when the board comes in more than ever. And, these scouts have done so much work on the back end of this draft. And certainly it's very difficult for the coaches to get to the front end of the draft, much less the back end. So we're really going to have to count on, how we ultimately put this board up. I mean, I don't want to dismiss it, but the coaches have, they've done the work on the back end as well. But, we really just got to follow our board right here. And, we've got some players up there, that have some special qualities, special traits, that if they're sitting there, they're certainly going to have our attention. But, now that we've really, in our mind, taken care of, some things we wanted to get done with these first 3 picks, I think we just cut and shoot. And I think it's going to be even easier now that we got done with these first 3 picks. We're going to be able to really, stay true to, where we invest all our money, which is our board.
Leslie?
Jerry, first for you, I don't know if you had a chance to see this. Stefon Diggs penned a letter to Trevon before the draft, just kind of applauding him for everything that he had done to get to this point, talked about kind of their history together, growing up together. They lost their father when Trevon was very young. I just didn't know how much of that you had learned through the pre-draft process and what you can say about who Trevon is as a young man, given what he and his brother have been through over the course of their lives.
Yeah, I had a great personal visit with Trevon, and we all did. And specifically asked him about the kinds of things that he had to overcome, if you will, or the kinds of things that might have made him the person. He was clearly appreciative of what his brother had been to him. He talked about how his brother was always so demanding and competitive and pushing him to be the best. They both like to catch the ball. Trevon still spends a lot of time catching balls. And of course, one of the things that you see immediately is how he plays the ball. He's outstanding. And his brother had so much to be was so much a part of what he is today. Now, I'm paraphrasing my interview with him. I think that that's part of what I like. They have exactly the same blood in them. Exactly. And they actually have some of the same way the influences made them be what they are today. And so that's pretty safe. It's a pretty safe bet when you get a siblings in this situation that compete in the NFL. So I was very influenced, to cut it short, I was very influenced by my interview with Trevon.
And then for Mike and Stephen, it was mentioned earlier, a lot of big school guys that you guys have focused on, but I think you look at the trends of this draft, that seems to be the case across the board. Obviously, every draft has got a lot of SEC guys selected, but this year it seems to be even just a disproportionate amount, even more so than maybe what the norm would be. I wonder if you guys think that has anything to do with the fact that the pre-draft process did get disrupted the way that it has because of COVID-19. Are you guys maybe approaching it in a way that's quote unquote perhaps safer, going with guys who you can see on tape that played against big school talent that hey, we can see him do X, Y, and Z on film?
I mean, I know from a coaching perspective, you just really trusted the process. I mean, obviously we've been put into a different evaluation situation with everybody being at home and things like that. So you really just trust the information that you're given. So whether it was big school or small school, I didn't really pay much mind to that personally. But I think obviously with the extra time on video, but I go back to what my earlier answer on the question about, how important the scouting department is to this process. So the ability to have the background and all those things in place where you can really hunker in, study the tape, put an honest grade on it, and start those conversations, and where everybody in the room has an opportunity to talk about each prospect and get a final grade and set that board.
The only thing I'd add is obviously Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson. I mean, they're regulars, in that Final Four, year in and year out, and they're also regulars year in and year out as the top of the draft class. So, the pedigrees are there. It's hard to argue. And, when you see these guys then go to the next level, at these big time colleges and then perform at a high level again and win day in, win week in and week out and win championships, that's hard to deny these guys. And, someone mentioned, when you see CD and you see Trevon and you see Neville get off the bus, those are football players. That's who you want getting off your bus. And Mike mentioned that, about our offensive line, our defensive line. I mean, those are, the type of players when you see guys unload and they get ready to walk onto that field, those are the guys, that you hope you're dressing out. And certainly we feel good about these three guys. And you look at a corner who's 6'1", 205, and that's what you're looking for, because these receivers are only getting bigger, faster, and stronger. So, we feel good about these big schools and what they're doing, and especially the guys that are performing at high levels. And obviously these three guys, not only came, to these schools who end up in the, in the championship games year in and year out, but they perform at high levels.
I have a little different, not different, but a little different perspective. This year, we really had to make our adjustments after the combine. When I look at what this league, when I look at what the Cowboys, when I look at what we allocate financially to the cost of scouting, about 90% of it had already been worked. Already 90% of the whole investment you make in scouting had been done before there were any adjustments made. And so it was a process of taking all the arduous work and travel and time and of going to all the schools and being around and all the tape that these guys have studied. As a matter of fact, for one, I value the December grade that comes in before this work is done at the headquarters of our football team. I value that because it is unfettered. It's not homogenized with everybody's opinion. That's a different look. But boy, what a job that Will and what a job these different regional guys have done to put that together in a form of presentation and a form of evaluation that can be presented under these conditions, which is everybody not in the same room. We're in rooms, but we're not in the same room. And boy, we've done a great job. The technology has not only been there adequately, it has exceeded any expectation. And I literally, detail-wise, presentation, order of presentation, this is the best that I've ever seen it put together. And I think we've all learned a lot from that. And so adversity sometimes brings a lot of some pluses. I think this is the case. We've really got a great evaluation of this draft and these players, and I frankly think our first three picks reflect that.
Carlos Nava.
Looking at the last day of the draft, What are your expectations for tomorrow, Coach? Do you have any priority?
Really, my priority is going to be really just get back to that board and trust it. I mean, it's there's some positions that obviously you're looking at that you look at the numbers, but really just the board has really fallen favorably for us, and I think we'll just continue to trust the board.
Go to Eric Mora.
Yes, Coach, how you doing? How do you feel so far with the team that you're building right now, and what are you guys still need to reinforce? What position are you guys looking for? What do you think is missing in the team so far?
Well, I mean, we feel really good about the process and everything that's going on. Obviously, we're in the middle of the draft here. We're halfway through, so the opportunity to add more players and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what we've started this past week with the virtual meetings with our players. So this is the time of year where you can make the biggest impact on your roster because of the numbers you can bring, and it's also the time of year where the off-season program starts and you're trying to improve there. So just really happy and excited about where we are, but more excited about where we're going.
Thank you. My second question is for Jerry. Jerry, I would like to ask you about this pandemic and all the effort that the NFL is doing in order to keep the social distance. What do you think about the reopening of the cities, the possible reopening of the Metroplex area, and also the possible comeback of the sports? Talking about the business in the sports, do you think this is coming too soon? Do you think this is the right decision? What's your perspective about this?
Well, that's a far-reaching and very convoluted discussion. Having said that, I think that the fact that last night we broke all records of ever watching this exercise we go through called the draft. There were over 15 million people that watched it. It was able to, at a time when people are hurting, at a time when people are wondering, at a time when people don't have the answers, no one does. I think the NFL and sports stepped up, and we created a respite. We created a diversion. We created some, if you will, some type of a business as usual approach. There is no question we're going to get back as a country. There is no question. And when we do, as we always do, we'll be better than we ever were. I'm proud that we got to, last night, have something that was of that much interest. As we move forward and we look at the challenges that other sports have, to have that opportunity to be a solace, be a respite for fans. As we look forward to it, we'll learn. And we'll probably have some things that we go forward with that we'll have to pull back on. But we'll learn. But make no mistake about it, what we're doing will be a big part of the future of America. I loved what one of the guys said when he said, the world changes. It just changes. When we landed on the moon, it changed the world. Not because of landing on the moon, but because of how we got there. We got there with a box called computer. Nobody ever messed with them much in practical everyday life. After the moon, everybody started messing with them, and it changed the world. It changed us. I think we're involved in something like that that's going to change us, and I certainly want our sport. I'd love for the NFL and football and America's, for instance, interest in our football. I'd love for it to really be a plus. And I think this was a plus. And but I think that, yes, we'll have football. And we'll have it, and hopefully the effort and the work we're trying to do right here will pay off in a few weeks and months for having our fans be able to see real football.
And thank you guys very much for joining us again tonight, and we will see you all again tomorrow. Have Have a good night.
Right?
Thank you.